Remember a time when lasers were just science fiction? If you're a child of the 70s, maybe the first time you heard the word laser was on an episode of Buck Rogers, and it was some futuristic technology from the 25th century. Or if you're a child of the 80s, maybe you remember Val Kilmer in the movie Real Genius using a satellite-mounted laser to pop the world's largest batch of Jiffy Pop ever. And if you grew up in the 90s, you might remember Austin Powers battling against Dr. Evil, who was trying to take the world over with his laser beam. Well, I remember the first time I saw a laser, and it was in the advanced welding lab at college. And I walked through the door and saw something in the corner the size of a train car, a literal train car. And that was the first laser I ever saw. So that first laser I saw was ginormous. And it had a fixed beam delivery system, so you couldn't really move the tube around. Instead, you had to move the table underneath the beam to get any work done. And then this thing wasn't all that powerful. I mean, we used to do burning projects on leather and wood because it barely had enough power to cut the thinnest sheet metal, and it certainly wasn't designed for welding. This thing was fully programmed by G-code. Right? XYZ coordinates telling this thing where to go, so it was cumbersome. There was no graphical interface. There were no characters. There wasn't a teach pendant, right? We just lined up and typed code into the computer and got it to hopefully do what we wanted. It was just raw coordinates and a prayer. And we still treated it like a death ray. Right? This thing was a class 4 laser, and the entire system was pointed back in the corner to try and stop reflective hazards from being cast out into the rest of the classroom. So it was a major concern. This thing was super costly to run. It was extremely power hungry, and it used so much gas that we had to use multiple bottles connected at the same time, or it would freeze up the regulator. Yeah, seems like a great solution. Power hungry, gas hungry, and if it goes rogue, it could cut you in half faster than a lightsaber. Not long after that, I had a friend go to work for a company that was doing laser blank welding, and they were replacing resistance welds with laser seams. And while it was really cool, they weren't doing it because lasers were easier. They weren't doing it because lasers were less expensive or more cost effective in those terms. What they were doing was they knew that if they could eliminate the flanges that were required on sheet metal to do resistance welding, they could save millions of dollars, right? So we were looking at better utilization. But people didn't fully understand the beauty of resistance welding. Right? When you're working with sheet metal that wants to behave any which way but loose, resistance welding forces alignment. Right? As we're pinching the metal together. And when that sheet metal's waving around, it's kind of nice to have that cost-effective process that uses no filler metal that is able to overcome those slight variations in dimensions, right? And dimensional tolerances. So it wasn't a revolution, and lasers didn't take over the world. In fact, as late as 2010, I was working with a company who was developing plasma arc systems using advanced TIG machines. And they were replacing lasers because they were so expensive to operate, and they brought about safety concerns that were far beyond arc welding. So we had advanced, costly technology that was difficult to maintain, it was costly to run, and it required some highly trained personnel to keep things moving. So as you can tell, lasers didn't immediately take over the world. Pretty cool technology. But they could put out an eye at 1,000 yards. So they brought some very serious safety concerns to the shop. The first laser that I ever saw out in the field in a manufacturing environment was in its own room behind a cinder block wall. And if anyone walked into that room, it immediately shut the laser off because they were so concerned about beam reflection hazards. So it wasn't something that was easily put into production. In fact, in that particular facility, the entire shop was built around the laser because it was feeding all the different systems. Now, fast forward to today, something has changed. New technology has brought different capabilities, easier to operate, lower power consumption, less gas consumption, and a solution that's really viable for a lot of shops. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna dig into that. What are the capabilities of lasers? What can they weld? How thick can they weld? Can they handle gaps? What is our material type? And then we're gonna talk about return on investment, because at the end of the day, MIG MIG and TIG are not going anywhere. Lasers are just coming into the space and taking over some of those ripe applications. And rightly so, right? We need to displace those old processes when they're not solving the problem. But at the end of the day, if MIG and TIG can be done effectively and cheaply, why would I buy a laser that's going to cost a lot more money and potentially bring some maintenance and safety concerns to the shop? So we're going to dive into that in real world applications, and then we're going to talk about safety for each of the different types of lasers that we discuss, so that you can go into the shop confidently and really look at a laser and find out how you would implement it and whether it's the best solution for you. We're seeing a big push for lasers, but can we separate the hype from reality? And we're not just seeing automated cells. I mean, we've seen big automated lasers for years. We've seen robotically mounted lasers that was kind of scary to think about in the day. And now we've even got handheld systems, which when I was a student in the 1990s, I never thought they'd put a laser in a welder's hand. Think of the potential damage. Handheld. Let that sink in. Handheld lasers. Nobody ever thought we'd put a laser in a welder's hand. We've come a long ways from Buck Rogers, Chris Knight, and Dr. Evil. And something has changed. We're going to explore that. We're going to get to the bottom of it, unbiased and objectively. We're not pro-laser. We're not anti-laser. We're pro-information. So the Laser series of the Sparks and Spatter podcast is going to be multiple episodes, and we're going to explore real-world applications. We're going to look at cost, justification, maintenance requirements, long-term service and support, and the big question in everybody's mind, safety. No hype, no magic wands, no illusions, just the fundamentals of what you need to know to go out and choose the right laser for your application, when it makes financial sense, and how you need to protect people in the vicinity from potential hazards. What are those hazards? I mean, laser welding is here. It's been here for a while, but it's making a huge push. So the question is, what does that mean for your shop? Stay tuned and find out.